Right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That should cover it. Lovely to see you all. I was just talking to Kim about heat waves. It's exceptionally hot for England, especially the north of England. I think in the future there will be widespread migration to the north of England because everybody will be trying to find cooler places to live. But the last couple of days it's been pretty hot too. So how that affects you, that makes you sleepy and lethargic, doesn't it? How the body affects the mind, and how difficult it is to meditate in extremes of heat and cold, how we're such fragile creatures that we really need perfect conditions, perfect conditions to meditate. And if we're a bit itchy or we've got a tummy problem or slight headache, everything affects our focus and concentration. So just bearing that in mind and being very easy on ourselves, let's start this session with a short meditation before we do some talk and discussion and see where that leads, so that we all feel as focused and calm as we can. We'll take some lovely deep breaths, all the time coming into your space where you are, checking your posture, and releasing tension. And return to regular, normal breathing, abdominal breathing, nice and deep and slow, and follow the breath. Let's just take this mindfulness to the sensations in the body with awareness of the ideas I brought to what affects our focus and concentration. And instead of being distracted, we can utilize feelings to focus even further. So go to the surface of your skin and just feel the sensation of air and clothing against the skin, like your own aura. And there may be hot spots and cold spots, itchy spots, tight or loose spots. Start to lose those labels and just feel. And you can do it in a systematic way, either starting from the feet and moving upwards, or just randomly, seeing where your mind takes you and why. Is it because you're feeling too hot? Is it because today you have a particular ache or pain? Just observe. Observe the sensation without labeling. And if you're too cold, just observe that sensation and what it does to your mind, how you wish to get a sweater, put the heating on. If that's not an issue today, just remember, again, that fragile state of comfort. So we're feeling the sensations, but not suffering from them. And we're feeling the sensations, but not being attached to them. Open to change at any moment. So now bring your focus to impermanence and consider the fluctuating changes in your environment, in your body, in the conditions. From moment to moment, hour by hour and day by day. and generate a feeling of complete acceptance of all conditions that arrive in your field of experience. Pain, pleasure, grief, loss, joy. Let them come. They're all visitors. And let them go. Very gently, bring your attention back to your breath. And when you're completely ready, you can end your meditation. Welcome, Christy. Right, okay then. So this evening, thinking of conditioning and the many ways in which we use that label, I remembered a format I used in training in the secular sector, in the private and public sectors, to understand how our ego becomes conditioned by certain circumstances. And we then create a sort of protective habit, if you like, of a way of dealing with things. And this is relating to stress in particular. So I wanted to use these examples for you to think about your own, the ways in which you deal with stress, and to see if any of these have any relevance. And then to be able to just discuss, the ego in general, how it plays games with the idea that it is protecting us, but actually creates barriers of communication. So some of you might have heard of this. This is, I don't actually know whether, I think she was English, I'm not sure. And it was written a while ago, but it still exists as a way of defining people by a woman called Virginia Satir. She wrote this in 1972. So, but you can see it still works. So she was a family therapist, and she identified 5 main types of behavior which are noticeable in stressful or difficult situations. So this has absolutely nothing to do with Buddhism, although we can see that it relates fully to Buddhism, as we've discussed later. So first of all, I'll give you the rough outline and then a little bit more detail. So, for instance, if there's a family row, then different people will take on different kinds of behavior which they use to deal with stress. So first of all, you've got the very common one. About 30% of people will go into this mode, according to her, the blamer. Okay, so the blamer is the one who points the finger and said, no, it wasn't me, it was you. You did this, you did that, you ruined my life, that kind of person. Okay, so think pointing finger. And then we've got the placator. Now, the placator doesn't like conflict. So it'll do about 50% of us are placators. So we'll do anything it takes to calm things down or get approval. They'll probably say, oh, please don't get upset. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Yeah. And they'll use hand movements, palms up, please, please, or don't, just calm, let's all calm down. Yeah, that's the placator. Then there's the distractor. This is an interesting one. Not many people are said to fall into this category, but you may recognize them. They'll react to threat by going off on a tangent. So if there's some kind of conflict going on, they've got, why don't I go out for pizza? So they'll just take you off into another area completely. Or why don't we just leave this till another time? Let's not do this now. Then there's the computer. They'll react to threat by becoming very logical and distant, perhaps crossing their arms and avoiding eye contact. And they'll express themselves in neutral, logical, and often confusing language. They might also say, let's take a moment and step back to review the situation. So they're there, but they're not going to be emotionally involved. Yeah? This is nothing to do with them. So their emotions don't come into play. Now, then finally, there's the leveler. And the leveler is someone who's on the level and responds openly and honestly, tells it like it is, can be constructive and creative. And only about 4 or 5% are in this category. And they often make very good leaders. So obviously what she's saying is what we're trying to become, what is the most useful way of being is to be a leveler. Yeah? You don't avoid, you don't try and calm things down, you address what the issue is and try and say, let's do something about this. Yeah. So what do you think? What's your natural stress response or behavior? And can you think of someone you know well? Were you smiling to yourself as you listened to those and thought, oh, that's just like so-and-so, they always do that. So this is typical in families, but also because she's a family therapist, that's where she did her studies, but also you can see it in work situations. And to be honest, Dharma centers, because although we're all, we might be in Dharma centers practicing Buddhists, we've still got ways in which we handle stress. And of course, one of the ways which I want you to consider, and I know I've experienced myself and others, is when you come to Buddhism, you get the message that to be emotional is not on. Yeah. You get the message that to be angry, to fly off the handle or to not be calm somehow, it is not being Buddhist. How many times? And I've had that myself, with students saying, well, so-and-so do that. That wasn't very Buddhist, was it? So I think that's a tricky bit of labeling to use, because what we're saying is we're in a situation where we know how we want to be, and we're going to deny being anything else. So if I get angry, I'll swallow it. Yeah. Now, the danger of that, of course, is when you swallow anger, it's there inside you and eats away. It hasn't been allowed to express itself, and it hasn't been allowed to be acknowledged because you're pretending that you're a good person and you don't get angry. Yeah. So that's a real danger for us, because as normal people, listen to this, we'll just go off at any angle. Yeah. We'll just express ourselves. and then it'll be expressed and maybe it'll go away. Well, the problem with that, of course, is that we're reacting. We haven't learned how to stand back, take deep breaths, think about it, and respond. So really, if we're practicing Buddhist, it's much healthier to learn Buddhism as a way of recognizing emotions, recognizing emotional states, and then being able to manage them, but not to pretend that we don't have them. Yeah? Oh no, I don't get jealous. I'm practicing equanimity. I'm always happy for other people, instead of thinking, crikey, I'm really jealous. Yeah. Just being able to go, that there's that emotion. And I know it's destructive, but I'm feeling it because I'm a human being. Yeah. I'm a human being, and all humans experience these emotions. So I've just got to watch that one. Yeah, I've got to watch it. It's a bit like having a class full of children and noticing the naughty one and thinking, I'm not going to do anything now. I'm just going to watch that one because they might go off, or they might miss. I've clocked them. So in your garden or your classroom of children, you notice the naughty one, and you love them just as much, but you want to help them. Yeah. Much healthier to use emotions like that for when we are likely to react. So we will come to a point where I will discuss with you quite soon, whether you recognize any of those. But what I wanted to add to the pot is when we're talking about our conditioning and our ways of behavior is the games we play. Now, some of you might be aware of this. E. Byrne, I think was it, again, I can't remember, but he was the one that kind of started transactional analysis, and he wrote books like, games people play. And he talked about our ego states, just as a contrast to Virginia Satier's behavioral types in stress situations. He said that we act either as life as taught, I'll go into these in a bit more detail, which is the parental voice inside our head. Yeah. Life as thought, which is our adult voice, or life as felt, which is the child's voice. So when he taught transactional analysis, he would say that, you can tell when somebody's talking, again, especially in a stressful situation, what voice is going to come out. So it's recognizing whether we still behave in our methods of communication with people. When it gets tough for us, we fall back into life as taught, the parental voice. So the parental voice would be, you might hear it, don't you dare speak to me like that. Yeah. So we've heard it, and now we're echoing it. Yeah. So we might do it, for instance, if we're having a row with a partner or our children. Yeah. Which is a very critical parent. The critical parent will say things, not just don't you dare do that, but will say things like, oh, don't be so stupid. Oh, you're being ridiculous now. It's kind of a flat statement, and is putting you in your place, quite condescending, quite patronizing. Yeah. And then you've got the supportive parent. So you might have been conditioned by a supportive parental view, which would say something more like, oh, don't worry, I'll do that for you. Very protective. Oh, you don't have to worry about filling those forms in. I'll do them for you. Now, what that parental voice is doing is it's supporting, but it's also a bit disempowering because it's protective and wanting to help you. Yeah. And then the life as felt, the child's voice, don't be so mean. Or you're being really mean now. That's a kind of parental voice. Or a rebellious child. Well, you can say what you like. I don't care. I'm being rebellious. I don't care what you say. All these are the kind of voices that we will have used as a child in response to the way an adult is with us. So you might recognize in there the ways in which you acted. Yeah. So I was quite a rebellious child. So I would have been, and you can tie this in a little bit with being aggressive or defensive or passive. Yeah. No, they're all types, aren't they? So I was much more like, well, I don't care. And I would say things that shocked. I'd swear or something so that my parents would go, oh, Ondy, you naughty girl. Yeah. So you might recognize that one. Now, some children are much more want to be loved. So they're much more likely to oh, I'm sorry, Mummy, please, I love you, please love me, because they're desperate, for that love. So it's kind of recognizing how we learnt to cope with being human from an early age through conditioning and habits. Yeah. And our Buddhism says we live conditioned existence. Conditioned existence. Everything we are, we've been conditioned. Yeah. It's a bit terrifying, really, because it takes away, you kind of think you're a nice, unique character and personality, and then you find out you're mainly conditioned by your circumstances and by your parents and by your peer group and schooling and all the adults that were around you and how they reacted to you. You might be able to go back and think, well, they always used to say that, for instance, this is me, I've got a very pretty sister and I'm fine about the way I look, but she was always, oh, you're such a pretty girl. Oh, and we love you too, Ondy, you nice plain girl. Yeah. So I wasn't aware I was plain. And I don't think I'm particularly plain, but I grew up with that conditioning of having the pretty sister. Yeah. So what does that do to your own psyche? Now, if people hadn't pointed out I was plain, I don't think I would have twigged it. Yeah. But it was because I was conditioned. So we all know that from our families, and we often get labeled a type. You're the argumentative one. Oh, you're patient. You lay the table. Leave them alone. What jobs you had to do because you were who you were. And it's fun, it's light, it's interesting and amusing to look back, but how does it condition our lives? Do we end up using the same conditioning on our children? Do we have low self-esteem because we don't think we're very pretty, for instance? Do we end up always being the one that is a bit rebellious? Do we always give in? Are we the person in the household that is always trying to placate because we want everything nice and calm? Yeah? This is often seen as the stereotypical male-female role, I would say, stereotypical, that you try and keep dad happy. Don't upset dad. Then we're all happy. If dad's happy, then we're all happy. So the mother would be more like a placater, traditionally. Yeah, that's what's portrayed. It might be different for you, but to be honest, in my family, it was definitely that. Well, don't say anything, just keep him happy. That was a common thing to do for that generation, anyway. So there you go. That's quite a bit to chew on, ego states and life as thought, just to finally come back to the games people play, this transactional analysis. Life as thought is the adult voice, which becomes aware of what we've discussed here. In Buddhism, it would be aware of the ego. What game is it playing? Does it want to be loved? Are we desperate for love? So we're trying to do things where people love us. Is that genuine? Is that our genuine behavior? Do we genuinely think this, or are we just trying to be loved? And equally, are we stroppy and belligerent because we grew up in a household that if you didn't fight, you didn't get anything? Yeah? Because, there's so many different ways in which we can be conditioned. Yeah. So life as thought is the adult way of dealing with problems, recognizing our behaviors, recognizing our stress responses, what the different modes we fall into. Computer, blamer, that's a common one. Everybody will have in their family a blamer. Yeah. Somebody who goes, it was you, it was her, she did it. Yeah. Especially as children growing up, points the finger, and still does in more subtle ways. Maybe we're much more upfront as children, but we can be much more subtle when we're adult. So we think it through. And the way that we do that is by using some of the level of behavior and using curious questions, as they say, rather than in an argument or in a stressful situation, defending ourselves, becoming aggressive, or just opting out completely. Yeah. So can we find out what caused this problem, or why is it that you're upset today? Using questions which are not blaming and are not accusing. You're in a bad mood. What's all this about? That's very accusing. Yeah. Is there something going on that you want to talk about? That's a curious question. And that's more rational. Yeah. So that's life as thought. Okay, I'm going to open that up now and see what we make of all that. So do I need to ask questions, or has anybody got anything to say? Lost Linda. Can see her very nice living room. Does anybody?
Barbara has a question.
Oh, right, brilliant. Okay, where are? Oh, yes, I can see.
I was just going to comment that my husband and I were talking just yesterday about how we were parentified as children and given so much responsibility that was beyond us. And we both heard the same statement from totally different environments. How can somebody so smart be so dumb? and it's interesting because I think we both internalized, like took in the second part of that. How can you be so dumb? Without realizing that, my husband commented, he said, and then the next thing I would be told is to go up and do the roof, like to put roofing on. And he said, if I was smart, I should have joined a union before I was 16. But we, like whenever we're in a stressful situation, we have a cross country move coming up. I see that in both of us, we have this kind of like, this is going to be a stressful time, and that stress isn't about packing and arranging. It's about the unknown of what will we do that's dumb, and we've both had really good educations. We've gone to very good schools. Like we've had accomplishments that would say we're not dumb, and we're still surviving. So we didn't mess up to that extent yet. Yeah. But that really shaped us. And we didn't get the takeaway that these tasks were being given to us. Like the silver lining would be these tasks were given to us because we were smart and they thought we could handle it, even though it was beyond a child. So I just find that interesting that, that kind of like being the product of that blaming, that it wasn't the situation that made us fail, and that anybody would have failed in that situation. It was something about me. It was like that there was something inadequate about me being blamed. So I find it very interesting to be on the receiving end of that blame, especially as a child. So I just wanted to comment that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, it's being personalized. So what happens then with your conditioning is there's always something in you that thinks it's your fault. Yeah. So that kind of repeats itself in situations where, well, this must be my fault. Well, there must be something wrong with me. I've messed up here. So that's the takeaway lesson from this, is to recognize that when you are at the receiving end of blame, when this is happening, you end up, but you can be very defensive. I'm not saying you personally, Barbara, but that's what it can do to people, is whenever anything happens, they get defensive and feel they have to, justify their behavior. Well, it must be them. It must be them. So that can be very limiting, very limiting. So that's a good one to watch out for. It is to then use the language of perhaps the leveler or life as thought. That's what these psychological approaches help you to do. Or in Buddhism, we would be talking about, or find your Buddha nature. We're not, when all the teachings in Buddhism, everything is empty. So there is no self that is that faulty person. It's just a construct. Yeah. So all those psychologies help us recognize that that cannot be true. It's just being used by other people who have a level of ignorance, yeah, to condition you, and who themselves were conditioned. This is the thing. The people who are pointing the finger, they've been conditioned themselves. So you can't even find anybody to blame. It's just life being human is being conditioned. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Really good example. Okay. Anybody else like to share their take on this?
When I was growing up, it was a very semi-violent, stressful situation. And I used to cope with it by fading into the background.
Yes.
And the way it affected me in my later life is, after I got married and my wife would want to argue about something, as soon as her voice rose above a certain level, I became like a deer in the headlight, and I'd just go,
Yeah.
not say anything, not
Yeah.
react, just freeze.
Yes. Yes.
And it took a long time before I was able to not react that way.
Yeah. And what helped you, Lou?
Dreams. I don't know how I got into it, but a lot of what I was holding back, I was able to release while I was sleeping.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So, because I don't know how I constructed it, but I put myself into situations where I was under a lot of stress. And if I wanted to cry, I'd cry. If I wanted to laugh, I'd laugh, but I could only do it while I was dreaming.
Wow.
And after a while, it worked into my life. So
that's so incredible, isn't it? It's like that, subconsciously you've got this incredible wish to express yourself, but that has been deadened by your experience in life. Yeah. And you became aware of it. Yeah, that would kind of tie in a little bit to the computer becoming very distant. Yeah. But the computer is a bit more like, let's take a moment, step back. So it's also a little bit like the placator. And sometimes these blend, the placator is like, I don't want this conflict at all, so I'm just going to melt here. And yeah, can't cope with it.
I just realized you said computer. Okay. So
Yeah.
I started working in computers in 1968.
Wow.
And I loved it. It's just like I felt like a computer.
Yes.
I knew how the machine felt. That's how I used to fix computers. And I was in computers until I retired maybe 12 years ago. So
wow. Yeah, but that's kind of a stereotype as well, that people who are really into computers are nerds. And what that means, nerds, is that they don't really communicate with people. They're just completely rational, logical beings with their computers. So it's a very interesting definition, isn't it? And again, as I say, there's so many people that work with computers. It is a stereotype, but we recognize it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Anybody else relate to that and just want to tell us what they recognized? Did it resonate with you? That's what oh yeah. Okay, Christy, thank you.
Yes, yesterday. Hi. Yes, yesterday my brother and I took my mom to the hospital to a heart valve test, and it was a stressful day, and it all turned out well, but it was a long day, and I felt like, okay, we did a good thing. And then later my brother called me and told me just out of the blue how since I'm retired, like he doesn't think that I should sleep till 10 and live my own life anymore. Like I'm just living here trying to enjoy life. And it just like hit me so hard. And I really felt angry, but I did exactly what you said. I was trying to be a Buddhist. So I was just like, okay. But I said, I'll call you tomorrow and tell you how I think you should live your life, just in a joking, deflecting kind of way.
Yes.
But it's just like, I'm taking it as my fault somehow. And this was a very timely subject for you two.
Yeah. So are you saying that you want to explore that a little bit to see what would be the most constructive way of dealing with it? Yeah. Was anybody,
yeah.
I mean, anybody can pipe in here, if they've got ideas. First of all, I'm very interested to know whether, when you say I was being a Buddhist, whether you find it that helpful, or whether there are aspects of that you feel might be unhealthy.
I think it's helpful, but it's also like a good a good crutch, in that I was always the placater, the one that just went inside during all the family drama.
Yeah.
And just looked at them like, why are you so loud? Why are you so violent? Why doesn't everybody just be quiet? And so I think I tend towards it, but I can see that it's unhealthy if I'm just swallowing it and not saying, hey.
Yeah. But it sounds, Christy, as if you did say something. You sort of made a joke, didn't you? How did he respond to that?
He just laughed and said, okay, I'll be waiting for your call, like knowing that, like joking back.
Yeah. Well, in a way, I think that's quite healthy, because you didn't just take it and then go away from the phone call and fume, did you? Or did you?
Yeah. Yes.
You did.
I still do
it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So well, you tell me, what would a leveler and a Buddhist who, let's say an assertive Buddhist, one, a Buddhist who isn't just going, thank you, they're walking on. which maybe if you're a monk or nun, you know, kind of works, but in the real world, it doesn't always work so well. What would you
Okay.
think leveler? You know, because a leveler is rational. They're trying to be creative, construct, trying to get the best out of a situation. So I think that's a kind of healthy Buddhist attitude, in that
Yes.
you're acknowledging it, you're dealing with it, but you're not trying to harm anybody. And
Yes.
you're not trying to create trouble. So in that way, it has its Buddhist flavor. So what do you think a leveler might have said, or how would they have dealt with that situation?
Maybe, and this has just come to me while you're saying that, maybe I would ask, what is your concern? I mean, like, why are you worried? You know, why are you saying this? Like, what are your concerns?
Yeah. Well, that would tie in with the asking curious questions, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Life
Yeah.
as thought.
Yeah.
And I think that just practicing that method is really useful. And we do have to practice it, because it won't come naturally to us because we've been conditioned. But you know, it's there because you've just come to it. And then what if we look at that logically, what that is doing is showing that you've taken it on board, but also putting him in a situation where he has to explain why he said it. Yeah. Yeah. And so then you really are being a leveler. You're making the situation very clear. And then how that will help you when the conversation pans out is you can go away with clarity and put it to bed more quickly. Yeah. Which is really interesting, isn't it? It's just the use of, it's just communication skills, actually. That's what it is. But it's it's creating new habits in our communication skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
And
that's very
also,
helpful.
yeah. And also, Christy, I'm just wondering, just interested, do you feel guilty because you sleep till 10?
I really wake up every day super happy about it. You know, I worked all my life
Yeah,
and
exactly.
worked hard, and I just feel like it's like this gift, and I just feel so happy. And then, but now I feel judged. And so now I feel pretty darn happy about it.
I think that's brilliant. Don't feel guilty about it. You've earned it, definitely.
Thank you for your clarity. I appreciate the tools. Really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's great. Anybody else got anything to add to the little pot here? Some great examples. Because I will finish with a meditation if there are no more questions. Just a short one. You okay with that? Right, let's do that. Let's take that into our hearts then. Okay, so just relax, get into your posture, take some deep breaths, and practice a little mindfulness. So let's just return to this word conditioning. Conditions. in which we are sitting now and how these affect us moment by moment. Cool, warm, itchy, painful. These are the physical conditions in which we live. And our body seeks perfection, perfect comfort, the right amount of cushions, softness of the bed, the flavour of the food, whether it's hot enough, cold enough, the temperature outside, always seeking perfection. And in the same way, our mind is never content. The cause of our suffering is desire, wanting. It's back to our Buddhist roots here. Always seeking that something that is better. And yet, due to our conditioning, we fall into habits, ways of behaving. And we think this protects our fragile egos. We have learned ways to deal with the world. And mindfulness teaches us to become aware of this. That's all. Awareness will do everything else. Once we are aware, we change. We see through the ego games, our own ego games. We understand why we behave the way we do in stress. And that knowledge and wisdom enables us to change. In this way, we avoid the circle of suffering. That keeps us stuck in conditions and conditioning that create more and more suffering. So just bring to mind your own conditioning with great compassion. See yourself as the child. Love yourself. See yourself dragging around the parental voices in your head. Who is in your head with you, telling you You're not good enough. You can't do this. It's your fault. See that with compassion and love yourself. And again, in situations, making your own families with partners and children, in habitual ways of behavior, have awareness and have compassion and love yourself. And in the same way that we are physically affected by cool and warm, by pleasant and unpleasant, just see that ego, that fragile ego of ours, constantly being expected to deal with every changing situation, and have compassion and love yourself. And absorb all that into your heart. And the compassion and the love, and generate a feeling of being totally loved and totally good enough just as you are. Dissolve the love into your heart. And just finish by thinking, wow, what a good job you're doing. Incredible efforts to self-improve and learn. The most anybody could do on this planet is to develop themselves. Because the ripples go out beyond our wildest imagination. And end your meditation. Thank you all so much, as always. a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll see you next week for our last one in my sessions in July. Yeah.
Thank you, Ondy.
Yeah.